Okay, everybody, it's that time of year again, that time where we make such unrealistic and emotional predictions about the MotoGP season. We tell ourselves what we want to happen, when ultimately most of the time they do not happen. But regardless, we must make these predictions, and hopefully just maybe one of them will come true. Because you know what they say, every great dream begins with a dreamer.
Ew, so sappy.
Yeah, I know. Let's start with the surprise team of this year, Gresini Ducati. With the departure of Enea Bastianini to the factory Ducati squad, being replaced by the struggling Alex Marquez, it's hard to say that this team will take a step forward in the new year. And I know that the fans of Ducati will say, but we finally got Marquez on the team. Yeah, but not the good one. Being in the shadow of older brother Mark at Honda has really made Alex Marquez struggle to find his groove in MotoGP since entering the Premier Class a few years back. But maybe a switch to the fierce Italian rivals at Ducati will give him an uptick in form. But ultimately, it's already been proven that switching between Japanese and Italian crotch rockets is never a good idea for your career. And with an unproven sophomore teammate in Fabio Di Giannantonio, there doesn't seem to be a standout leader on this team. So unfortunately, I believe Gresini will regress this year.
But look at what Bastianini did last year.
Yeah, but Bastianini is a freak of nature. But don't worry, Ducati always ensures they win something by having the most teams in the field. Okay, now comes one of the teams with the best names on the grid, Gas Gas. Or officially Gas Gas Factory Racing Tech 3, KTM satellite team. Technically Gas Gas is a factory team because they're going to race their own branded bikes, but they're owned by KTM and are actually going to be racing with KTM's RC16 bike, which means that they will have the exact same bike as the KTM factory team. So does that equal podiums and wins for MotoGP's newest team? Nah. Not really. Gas Gas went ahead and brought in experienced former KTM factory rider Paul Espargaro to lead the team and to pair up with newly graduated Moto2 champion Augusto Fernandez. Seems good on paper, right? Well, I don't have much confidence in anything going right for this team this year, to be honest. As we've seen in recent history, just because you were killing it in Moto2 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a star straight away in MotoGP. This is the real deal. I mean, we're talking the big leagues now, and I think we can agree on the obvious. It's hard. That's what she said. With that in mind, I believe that Gas Gas will struggle in the bottom of the pack at most races this year, with the only bright spots being from Espargaro managing to finish in the top 10 on occasion. Now, Aprilia surprised everyone in 2022 by finally showing the bike and the riders to compete for the championship. Oh wait, sorry. Wrong Aprilia. The satellite team of RNF Racing switched over from Yamaha to Aprilia for 2023 after a disappointing 2022 season. Luckily for them, they're on a faster bike, the RSGP, which is the same as the factory squad. That should translate to success, right? Well, unfortunately, RNF took on KTM outcasts Miguel Oliveira and Raul Fernandez as their rider duo to hopefully bring them some success. Two riders that have never been on Aprilia bikes before. Now, it doesn't mean that RNF Aprilia cannot find the odd podium or even a race win, because Oliveira has shown he can achieve that at KTM, especially when the weather is wet. However, I do think Fernandez will continue to struggle this year. It's only his second year in the top class, and he still needs more time to develop since his rushed promotion to MotoGP. Also, it being his second team and second bike in 2 years, the adjustment period will occupy most of his time this year. But I do foresee the same fate with this team as Gas Gas, struggling near the bottom of the pack with Oliveira bringing in the odd podium for the team. And now, to the home of one of the most legendary Japanese motorcycle manufacturers in the world, Honda. That's right, first starting with the satellite team, LCR Honda was said to have done well in picking up abandoned former Suzuki rider Alex Rins to pair with a seemingly always underachieving Takaki Nakagami. The 5-time race winner should, in theory, bring a much-needed boost to the LCR team after the departure of the beatless Marquez brother. Because LCR, for some reason, can just not count on Nakagami, he's too inconsistent. And to be honest with you, I believe this is a make-or-break year for the Japanese rider. If he doesn't make any noticeable improvement this year, then will he ever? But I think the Japanese manufacturer is scared of the media sandstorm that would come their way if they did cut their only Japanese rider. In their heads, they're probably thinking, we are Japanese, he is Japanese, we must stick together. Domo arigato. Well, if sticking together at the cost of the team is what you want to do, then you can't blame me for having little hope in this team. Don't get me wrong, I think Rins will do great. I just don't think Nakagami will keep up and will end up costing the team in the constructors' standings and in getting big fat dollars for the team's budget in the future. And then onto the factory squad. What a difference a year makes. Although in 2022 question marks about its riders prevented Honda Repsol from reaching its full potential, I think this year the main constraint on Honda's success will be its bike, as the RC213V has been known to be a bit moody as evidenced in 2022. However, when you put one former world champion in Marc Marquez alongside another in Johan Mir, on paper you get what's called a super team. Honda finally has a second rider capable of regularly fighting at the front again, in the shape of Mir, which hasn't been seen at Honda since the days of Marquez riding alongside fellow Spaniard Dani Pedrosa. So for Mir, I believe he will be a championship contender this year, even though he technically has been a contender the last couple of seasons, riding for the now defunct Suzuki. Video link in the description. Cough, cough. He always tended to fall off in the final stretch of races, but this year I have faith that he will be in it to win it, right until the end. I can't necessarily say where he will end up in the standings when crossing the final checkered flag of the year, but I have a feeling he will prove that 3 years ago was not a fluke. Now the real question here is in Marc Marquez. Some believe Marquez is still the best rider on the grid if he can stay healthy, and that's the important part, if he can stay healthy. And that's a big if. There's no question injuries have taken their toll on the former world champion, so he just needs to stay on the bike, because unfortunately we see too many crashes like this.
Let's hope that Marc Marquez is going to be okay. Of course, there's going to be major concern here.
But if there's any indication that Marquez is still one of the best riders on track, it's the way he was able to drag race results from a 2022 bike that had little right being up at the sharp end, even with Marquez still a long way from full fitness. So what do you say? Does he still have one more championship left in him? Maybe. But I think it's not this year. I think this year's champion will come from the final team on this list, but I do predict Marquez will finish with at least 3 wins on the season. I know, I don't like putting exact numbers to my predictions, but I feel confident enough in the rider that he is, and the fact that he can dominate at certain tracks like Kota. Again, video link in the description. Cough, cough. Now, if you said this time last year that 4 MotoGP lineups would remain unchanged into 2023, Pramac probably wouldn't have been on many people's lists, as Jorge Martin seemed destined to graduate to the factory Ducati squad at the time. But his fast but wild tendencies and the unstoppable rise of Bastianini ultimately swayed Ducati, so Martin's consolation is another factory spec offered alongside Johan Zarco, a pairing that almost scored the runner-up spot in the team's championship last year. Therefore, I'm predicting Pramac will win the award for best independent team for the 2nd year running. I think Zarco offered Pramac a known quantity last season, and that how well Martin is able to settle down and be a little more consistent would define the team's season. But maybe that known quantity is the factor preventing Pramac from really taking off into the upper echelon of teams. Mind you, with Zarco's experience and poise and Martin's absurd talent, it's still the kind of roster any MotoGP satellite team would sign up for in a heartbeat. The real question is, can Martin continue to develop and prove that he is worthy of a factory Ducati seat, even though that seat will not be free for at least 2 years now? I think the answer is yes. Martin does have the potential to rack up podiums and wins for Pramac, with Zarco picking up a few podiums here and there to round out the team. But really, the focus here is on Martin. My prediction is that he will continue to show his worth and line himself up for a factory seat in a couple of years with Ducati, or at the very least, a factory seat elsewhere even after this year, because who doesn't want a ruthless rider called the Martinator riding for them? Being parachuted into the Yamaha lineup in the second half of 2021 and being out of sync with the rest of the grid as a result was arguably the biggest factor in Franco Morbidelli escaping more questions about his MotoGP future. While Fabio Quartararo stayed in title contention until the end, Morbidelli failed to get anywhere near that level, 17 places behind his teammate in the standings. We must remember that it wasn't too long ago Morbidelli finished runner-up in the championship after a stellar campaign riding for the satellite Yamaha team, which actually earned him the spot at the factory Yamaha team. Accompanied by the former world champion Fabio Quartararo, who always delivers results, can Morbidelli regain his 2020 form and become a solid number 2 rider for the Monster Energy Yamaha? Well, I think the answer really depends on the bike Yamaha provides for their team this year. Franco would really benefit from a more powerful bike to give him a chance to support a superior teammate in the fight for the Riders' Championship. Speaking of the championship, Quartararo, aka El Diablo, would kill for a faster bike as well, and that's what was plaguing him in 2022, just simply not being able to compete with the power of the Italian stallions of Ducati. So my predictions for Yamaha are that Quartararo contends for the championship once again, finishing in 3rd place, while Morbidelli has a rebound year to prove to Yamaha that he is worth keeping. These could be totally wrong, but as a man, I'm used to being told I'm wrong all the time. Next up, we have KTM. Now this one is interesting because KTM always feels like they have a nice bike with nice riders, but they're never really in contention for either championship. In recent years, they're never really in contention for wins and podiums, but on the other hand, they're never just passengers at the back of races. So what do we make of them? Well, with their signing of thriller Jack Miller to pair up with homegrown Springbok Bad Brinder, I think KTM really has a shot this year to launch themselves into the top dogs of the sport. You know the expression, there's just something in the air? Well, indeed, I do believe there's something in the air over at KTM, because I just get a good feeling feeling about them in 2023. I mean, Brad Binder has already tasted victory and multiple podiums at the Austrian outfit in his short career at the top level, and even scarier, he seems to get better with every passing year. You know what that means?
No we don't. Just get to the point already.
Okay, fine. It means that Binder's gonna get multiple wins this year and finish in the top 5 of the Riders' Championship, after finishing in 6th place the last 2 seasons. I have confidence in my South African brother to finally crack the top 5 this year. That's my prediction, and I'm sticking to it. As for Miller, I do see him taking a slight step back this year at KTM, you know, just adjusting to a new bike and all. Miller is kind of an unknown at this point in KTM, even after coming off of a mega season at Ducati. I believe he will fall just outside the top 5 in the Riders' Championship standings by season's end. But overall, quite frankly, this is the best rider lineup KTM has had in years, and it's pretty exciting to think of what they could accomplish. The anticipation is killing me. I can't take it anymore. Okay, calm down. Now, I wouldn't blame anyone for putting this lineup at number 1 in terms of rider lineup. A big level of praise is warranted for what has so far been a harmonious and highly effective pairing between Surprise 22 title contender Aleix Espargaro and teammate Maverick Viñales. Espargaro's evolution has arguably been just as impressive as Aprilia's, and Viñales teased becoming a 23 title contender on numerous occasions last year. But there are still a couple of lingering final doubts I have over whether either of these riders would deliver a title with the right bike against some of the riders in this video. I mean, Viñales operates at his sky-high peak for only about 30% of any given season, and Espargaro is a remarkable story, but still probably only just a tier 1B MotoGP rider at best, behind the team leaders at Honda, Yamaha, and Ducati. But I think what is important here is the relationship between Espargaro and Viñales. They are very close, and I believe their close relationship helps each other go faster. Imagine your best buddy cheering you on when you produce great results, and you doing the same for him. I think that's the sort of relationship any team would love their riders to have. So for 23, I believe Aprilia will launch themselves into title contenders for both championships, riders and teams. If anything, Espargaro will replicate his impressive 22 season with regularly occurring podiums sprinkled with a couple wins, and Viñales will regain his peak Yamaha form and contribute a couple podiums to that tally as well. Alright, here it is. Last, but certainly not least, there's Ducati, the factory team. I believe this lineup is head and shoulders above the rest, but not in the way you would expect. I mean, this lineup isn't just good because both defending world champion Pecco Bagnaia and newly promoted teammate Enea Bastianini are fast, even though it's not something to complain about. But in fact, it's made even better by the fact that in 22, there was just a little bit of so-called friction between them that should inspire both of them to push just that little bit harder now that they're teammates. And you can bet on the fact that there will be absolutely and positively no team order drama this year. With 2 riders very capable of winning the championship on a very capable bike, it's all fair game this year. So the time has come. I know you've all been waiting for it. My prediction for the 2023 MotoGP World Champion is Enea Bastianini. I know, I might be going out on a limb here, but I just have a certain feeling about this guy. Something about the way he rides and his abilities just reminds me of the greats in the sport. And this is no disrespect to Bagnaia, but I just believe that Bagnaia is a little too inconsistent with finishing races. I mean, it was absolutely remarkable last year that Bagnaia had 5 DNFs and still managed to win the title. Usually that doesn't happen, no matter how many race wins you produce. So as long as we're talking about Bagnaia, I predict he will finish runner-up to his new Ducati teammate in the 2023 championship. He will probably fight it out to the end, but ultimately I believe Bastianini will prevail. He's that hungry young gun with a chip on his shoulder, out there with something to prove, especially to his new employers. So in other words, Bastianini is my prediction to become the new world champion. Well, there you have it. My predictions for the 2023 MotoGP season laid out for you in this video, and if I had to make one last prediction, I predict that I will be completely off on most of the predictions in this video. But hey, that is a risk I am willing to take. So let me know in the comments what your predictions are and who you think will be the next world champion. It's a long season. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoy the season ahead of us, because I know I sure will.